Okay, we're beginning to get live. All right, now we are live, actually. Okay, now let's just get started. Hopefully everything is okay. It all looks okay from this side, at least. So let's just start. Okay, hello everyone and welcome to ML Done. So with yet another exciting session on our live stream sessions where we talk about deep learning MLOps with Khalil as our honorable guest. Welcome, Khalil.
Thank you, Mehran. It's a pleasure to be back, and I'm happy to see more people trickling in. I hope the last session was as exciting for you as it was for me. I did at some point get carried away and just went off, forgetting about time. So apologies for that. We're hoping this session we'll try and keep things on track, and we'll try to pack as much punch into the 1 hour as you expect. So let's see how it goes.
That's great. Perfect. So how about this? How about we just get started with a just bit of a review as to what we did the last session. Khalil.
Sure. So last session was really exciting because we took our first step towards setting up a development environment, and we spent a lot of time on it because it's the foundation on which our models will live on. So whether it's experimentation or deployment, the starting point will be very important. So I think I spent a lot of time just kind of going through the differences between environment managers. So these are software packages that help you manage your virtual environments. And then what package managers do. And these are tools that help you download packages and install them. And we went through the process of setting that up. We discussed the difference between Conda and Pip, highlighting the advantages of both and disadvantages. And we started creating our virtual environment for the VAE projects that we're going to work on. So today, the idea is to build on what we did yesterday. Last week, time flies. Build on what we did a whole week.
Already been a week, yeah.
Yeah, so build on what we did last week and wrap up the process of setting up your environment. And what we'll do, hopefully, is we'll just get started, but you'll see how development environments are created for collaboration, because in this case, the solution is not going to be used or built by me alone, but by Mehran and I. And we hope to kind of go back and forth as if it's sort of a team scenario, product building scenario within a team. So it's going to be exciting. So we're just going to get started. Mehran, what do you think? How should we proceed?
So yeah, so I think that so we have installed some basic packages the last time, as you said yesterday. So I think that we could just get started with setting up the project layout, maybe for like 10 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Like create directories and stuff on your side, and then we just take it from there. How about that?
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah. You should be able to share the screen, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So can you see my terminal window? Yes, you can.
Yes.
Okay, so remember from last week, what we did was we created a Conda environment for our VAE project. And I created this folder, which is in my projects directory called VAE, which is not essential for creating a virtual environment, but for the project, it serves as a place for us to store our repository and then the files that we need in building our project. So at the moment, it's empty. There's nothing in there. So this is it, it's empty. So before we create a repository, what we want to do is decide what the structure of the files in the repository should be. There is a common pattern you see across many projects where you create a folder, one for your data. So in situations where you need to load data from your disk, not from a database, it's good to have a folder for that. So we're going to create a folder for that. It's also good to have a directory for your notebooks and for your source files as well. So we're just going to call it source, S-O-U-R-C-E. So the short form is just source. What else again do we need? It's also helpful to have documentation page or a documentation directory. We'll build that when we get to a more advanced stage in the project. Am I missing something, Haran? What's something that?
Yeah, so some particular directory that I've seen a lot on GitHub repositories is data utils, which I think is all about all of the scripts that you have to do any sort of pre-processing with the data.
Okay, and this contains code files that manipulate the data, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
For example, in Pytorch, we will be creating a dataset class, which is a Pytorch sort of script. We will be creating maybe some Python scripts for doing certain pre-processing that is required for our image data, for example. So what I've seen, I don't know how common this is, by the way, right? So I've seen it quite a bit. I don't know whether this is standard, but the data _utils, I think is what it's called.
Yeah. Okay, so what I was thinking is, I think that it's a very common practice to have a utils directory, whether it's data utils or pipeline utils. Let's just call it a utils directory. And I think the convention would be that anything that doesn't have a location within your project goes into the utils directory. But what I was thinking was that we should leave the source directory to contain all these utility files, all the classes we create. Anything that is a source file that is not a notebook should go into the source directory. Then everything that is a notebook file, which is IPython notebooks, should go into IPython notebooks, and the data files will be there. And at some point, I'll demonstrate how, which I think you should be very familiar doing that, how you can connect the three directories together so your notebooks load in modules and packages from the source file and read in files from the data directory. But maybe we should start with less, and then we can build on that going forward. So we have what we need there. What I also need to do now is create the configuration file that allows you to set up this project on your own end. So I'm going to export the environment I created. Now, if you remember, I created a VAE environment. So I'm just going to list out all the environments I have, and this command does it. So there's a base directory, a base environment. This is loaded by default. There's a test, which I did some weeks back. And then this is our virtual environment, which is VAE. And the location of that virtual environment is miniconda/env/VAE. So I want to export all that you need to create this environment on any machine in the future. So to do that now, all I need to do is do a conda environment, and then I'll say export. And when I'm exporting it, I want to push whatever has been exported. First of all, let's see what it does. What it does is it spits out all the packages that we've installed. And this is a lot of packages because I don't remember installing all of this, right?
Exactly.
Let's do that again. Yeah, or in slow-mo. So I can see a lot of stuff, including beautiful soup. bleach, really interesting, really decorator, and fret not, worry not. Sometimes once you set up one library, what happens is once you install one package, Conda or Pip will go off and install all the packages that are required to run the package that you've installed. So these are called transitive or second order packages. So for now, we'll stay with this, but I'll show you what I tend to do. So I will export the environment, Conda environment, export, and then I'll pipe it to a file called environment.yaml. Okay, there. So now yep.
Sorry. So this environment.yaml is what I understand is that if anybody wants to exactly clone this environment with everything inside, all they need is this file.
That's it. It's just a single YAML file. And we'll look into that YAML file to see what's contained inside. So I'm just going to load it. And what you can see is, very interesting. Did you notice that there's a name section and the name of the environment is base? Yeah, so there you have it. We made a mistake there. So we're going to, what we haven't done is activate our environment. So so notice how that has changed from base to VAE now, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the environment file and then I'll recreate it again.
But you know something, Khalil, it was also a good sort of point that whenever we create these exports, it's not a bad idea to take a look inside before we do anything with them. It's also a good idea.
It is. I worked with a PI, Angus, and he was more of a mentor to me than a PI. I don't know if the lines, there are PIs that aren't mentors, but Angus would always say, trust but verify. I think he got it from a past American president somewhere. But with data, with code, with processes, even if you trust it, just verify because you don't want to make silly mistakes. So now let's verify what we have inside again. Now we have the name VAE and the channels from which we've loaded data. There's Pytorch and the defaults. And remember when we're installing Pytorch, we specified that we wanted Pytorch dependencies to come from Pytorch. I don't know if you remember the command, but I'll just kind of load it up. I think it's very interesting to see that. I have a second screen, so I'm not looking at the wall.
Yeah. Yeah, also, just before we go into the command, I noticed that Ninat has a question there in the chat, but I don't know, like, let's just, wait and answer all the questions midway. And so guys, please, Ninat, apologies if this is any inconvenience, but please, all of you, whatever questions you have, just keep posting them in the chat box. I promise you, we will address all of them, okay? Halfway through today's session, we will address all of them, and then one more time at the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So remember when we're installing Pytorch, we came to this website and we simply copied over this line. If you remember what I said was the instruction here says, Conda, please install Pytorch along with Torch Vision. We don't want Torch Audio, so we deleted that. And then there was a -C, and I said what this hyphen does is it tells Conda to look into a Pytorch channel. And the way to think of channels is Conda has access to many directories where packages are compiled and stored. One of it would be the one hosted by Anaconda. Another one would be one created by Pytorch. I could choose as a single person, as an individual in this room, to create my own channel and allow you to install binary files or packages that I have compiled. And when I do that, and if I decide to call that ML Dawn, you may choose to install Pytorch by simply specifying MLDon in here, and it will load Pytorch from my directory. So that's what's happening in there. And you can see that's reflected in our channels here that we've installed stuff from the Pytorch channel and there, and all the others come from the defaults. Now, we installed just a few things, and yet we have a lot of stuff, that we did not install. So there's also another bit there. There's a prefix. And what this prefix does is it tells whomever is set in this environment that when this environment was set up, it was installed in /users/khalil/miniconda/emps/vae. This wouldn't matter if Mehran is setting up on his machine. So we don't need that. So the first bit is the name of the repo. The second bit is the channels in which the packages have been installed. The third bit is the list of dependencies, which are the Python packages that have been installed in this environment. In each of the line, what you have is a package name, and then the version of the package, and in some cases, the hash code in there, which is fluff. You really don't need it, but you could keep it in there if you want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up a little bit. There's nothing wrong if you don't clean it up, but I'm just going to clean it up, remove the bits that you don't need because less is more. Mehran or whomever sets this repository will set it up in the prefix that you wanted to. So in the location on their hard drive. So that will go. Okay. When we go up in there, the name is important. I want the name of my environment to be the same as Mehran's environment. I want the channels to be the same. So I want him to load from the same channel. I know I did not install this because these are transitive dependencies. So I'm just going to go through the ones I did not install, which is a lot. And then I'm just going to delete them. And what will happen is when Mehran installs it, Conda will go off and pull down the dependencies that are relevant to Mehran. That's what will happen. So I'm just going to delete that. I didn't install IPython, Ginger, JPEG. Now you don't have to do it, but there's no point carrying more dead weight than you need. So I know we installed Jupyter, so that will stay. I know we installed Jupyter Lab, that will stay. And then how do you know what to delete? I think a lot of experience helps. But in most cases, what you Conda install should be in your head, and then you can go off and edit it where necessary. I know we installed NumPy, so I'm going to keep it in there as well. And Pip was installed for us, but I'll keep it in there.
Yeah, so for example, in let's say in NumPy, there were a couple of lines that had the word NumPy in them, but you kept one of them and you erased the rest.
Oh yeah, so so yes, so what you see here is two lines matching NumPy version 1.23.1, and then NumPy base 1.23.1. The version that exists in any published, the version that we installed was just called NumPy. We did not install NumPy base. So it's very likely that when we installed NumPy, Conda figured that we needed NumPy base, and it went off to install NumPy base for us. So as a rule of thumb, keep the stuff that you installed. Feel free to take out the stuff that you didn't install. So less is always more in there. So Jupyter Lab is there. Now you can see we also installed Jupyter Lab, but we did not install Jupyter Lab Pigments or Server. So I'm just going to delete all of that in the interest of time.
But I mean, we are erasing these things, but at the end of the day, if I'm going to recreate this very environment on my machine, it will go ahead and install these things again. So what's the advantage of erasing them from the configuration file?
Readability. I don't know if you've heard this, but it's a common saying in programming circles that when you write code, you should think of whomever reads your code as a maniac. who knows where you live. And the idea is, the idea is we tend to think that we write code for computers, which is the first step. But in reality, in a collaborative environment, we write code for humans to read. So we want to reduce the cognitive overhead for them to figure out when there's a problem or not. And let's take this scenario. Let's assume I set up this dependency, this Python environment using this environment.yaml file, and I send it over to you, and there's a problem. Would you rather go through a file that has 4 dependencies that I installed, or would you rather go through one that has 100 dependencies? So you want to be able to narrow down stuff to say, Khalil, you should not have installed NumPy base. You should have installed NumPy.
Yeah, so actually something very, so as you're erasing the lines, in the interest of time, I'm also going to just continue saying what happened exactly to me. One time I received this environment file. It had, as you said, loads of lines, right? And so as we're going to do today, I'm going to use this environment file to actually recreate the VAE environment on my own local machine. But what happened was certain transitive packages or dependent packages would throw some errors, right? So, I mean, the problematic packages, for whatever reason, can be any of these lines, like dispersed sort of like randomly. And when I was trying to actually download, like install and download each particular line or package, it would just go from the top all the way down and install every package in the environment.yaml file. But then the problem was, all of a sudden in line 10, one package had a problem, so I had to deal with it, and then again start over again. But at line 25, again, another package was problematic, and it was all of them were those dependent packages. And in particular, I remember one nasty one, the MKL one. I have, to this day, I don't know what it is. It always gives me a hell of a headache.
I think one of them is for matrix multiplication. So what it does is it allows you to accelerate matrix multiplications. And they are really nasty when you miss one of them. So so what I noticed was I couldn't find Torch in my environment.yaml file. And I was wondering whether we installed it to the base environment or if we installed it to VAE. So I'm just going to check again. I'll do another export.
Maybe conda and maybe conda list even. Let's see whether we have Pytorch here.
Okay. So we do have Pytorch, but I didn't see it in the environment.yaml file. So I'll just export it one more time. And then load up my environment.yaml. And now I'll search for Torch. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, one of the verifications. So I'll just quickly stream through this, Mehran.
Yeah.
And that's it.
At some point, I'm gonna also like ask you how you go, like what you're doing with your keyword to go through this text editor to do searching and marking and erasing so easily.
Oh yeah, okay, fine. Feel free to ask. We'll push you to the question section. This is your MKL file, isn't it?
Yes. God damn it. Yeah, I remember.
Okay, good. So I think we're ready to go now. There's just this bit, and the next bit now is us setting up a GitHub bit. Okay, so I think we're good to go in. Yeah. Okay. That was a long one. Okay, so we have our environment, and what we need, the environment.yaml file in there, the data file, the notebooks, and then the source files. And if you look at the environment.yaml file, it's been trimmed down to the barest minimum. So I'll get rid of the prefix, and then we can get started in creating the good. So yep, pretty neat. So the next thing now we have is to push this to GitHub, where Mehran can now pull down and try to set up on his machine to see if it works or if it doesn't. So Mehran, do you want to give that a shot? Just kind of create a repository, and I'll invite you over for it.
Okay, great. So I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay. By the way, if you don't know what this is called an MRI face. This is an actual MRI face.
Yeah, I've always wondered. Is that what you see when you do an MRI?
That's what you look like when you do an MRI.
Oh, that's so scary.
All right, so I'm on MLDon's GitHub repository. So I have to go under repositories. And I've got loads of, I actually need to clean this mess. But so here I go under new repository.
Okay.
And let's call it VAE, I suppose. I mean, why not?
Yep.
It's available.
Interesting. No, but I think it's local to you.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
This code will contain the MLOps and Deep Learning live stream stuff.
Very eloquent.
Very eloquent. So it's going to be public, or should be private until we decide to make it public.
Yeah, push it private if you want. It doesn't matter, to be honest.
I was just thinking, so in the middle of developing the project, if we want to ask our audience to contribute to this, then it means it has to be public, right?
Yeah, so in that case, let's leave it as public.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
So we're gonna need initialize this repository with an existing README file. Yeah.
Yep.
So also about this git ignore.
Python. So yes.
Okay. And do we need a license? I don't think so.
I think we should leave it empty for now.
Yeah. And then we're going to create the repository.
Yes.
And hopefully down the line, Khalil, you could also tell us like what is the advantage or like what happens if we don't have this README file while creating it? Is there anything that could happen as a result of that? And also hopefully we will be in the future talk about git ignore and what it is and so on and so forth.
Well, sure, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just gonna create repository then.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, good stuff. So the next step is, I think you need to invite me to that environment, to that repository here.
Okay, so how am I gonna invite you?
You go to settings. And then you go to collaborators, I think. Could be.
Add people.
And then you add people, yes. And you should search for MICA.
Yes,
that's me.
You were the first one.
I know, right? Very unique name. I got that moniker a long time ago, a very long time ago. So no surprise.
Okay, so you must have received an invitation.
Yes, I did. So I'm going to check out that invitation quite quickly.
Do you receive an email or do you receive something on GitHub?
I do receive an email. I'll show you what it looks like. So this is what it looks like. You get an email saying you've been invited to collaborate. And then there's a slash username slash project name. So there it is. But I suspect you also get something from GitHub as well. So if you go up here, I'm assuming, so I'm just going to check to be certain. Yep. So you get an email or a message there saying you've been invited. And the next step is to accept that invitation.
Yeah.
So now we have the repo. So the next step now would be to clone this code. And what cloning does essentially is to pull this entire repository onto my own machine. And you have a few options to do that. You could run, you could use Github Desktop, which is very good if you're not familiar with the GitHub commands or with Git commands. Or if you've installed GitHub CLI, you simply say you want to clone. So GH is like GitHub repository clone, and then you specify where you want it to clone, the repository you want it to clone. Or if you have any SSH setup, you use that bit in there. I'm surprised I don't have, oh, this is a new machine, so I don't have SSH key setup. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this bit over and I'll go to my terminal.
Before you continue, Khalil, can I just ask you a question? So sure. Right before you, I had shared my screen and I was doing the stuff of creating the repository. Had you stopped sharing screen at that moment?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I was just wondering, like, because right now as you're sharing your screen, I also in sharing my screen, but I'm looking at the live stream and I'm seeing your screen, which is what it's supposed to be doing. So I just worried for a second, like as I was doing what I was doing, was my screen shared?
It was.
Okay, good.
Yes,
good.
It was. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. So now I'm going to set up the repository. And what I want to do is I want to clone it into my VAE. So I'll do a git clone, and then I'll specify the URL in there. There. So what it has done essentially is it went off online, so that's remote, to GitHub, checks the number of files, what it calls objects and directories, compressed them, and then just simply downloaded all of them 100% into my directory in there. So let's see what it looks like. So it seems like what happened is it left my directory structure as it is, but it pulled in a separate folder into a VAE folder under VAE, which is super weird. But I know why it did that. So what I wanted was to set this directory up as our repository, but what it did was to set it up separately in there. So I don't need it to be in there. I need it to be up here. So I'm just going to delete that bit. It's the same thing as if it never happened. And then I'm going to go up one level and then I'll run the command now. So the directory already exists, and ideally I shouldn't have it in there because it will assume that it will try to pull a new directory structure and overwrite what we have. So what I will do now is I'll go back to the former directory. I'll show you a trick. This is one of the interesting bits about Git. And then I'll run the clone command, okay? So we're now back to where we were, where we have two VAE commands, VAE directories, one of them in there, and then the other bit in there. So what I'll do now is copy over everything I have in this into that. So it's as if, you know, the parent directory didn't exist. So I'm just going to do that. Okay, and then, okay, probably I can't do that now.
Yeah, maybe you can just rename the parent directory and then copy it.
Yeah, thank you for that tip, Mehran. I'll just do that. Thank you. I wish there was a way to zoom because my fonts are a bit. Okay, so because maybe terminal is open in there, just going to. So there's a process holding it. We can't rename because another operation is in progress, such as moving or copying or emptying the bin.
Maybe you can just stop your terminal then.
I do think it's terminal holding on to it. This one we'll find out.
Sometimes
okay. Okay, terminal, goodbye. I wonder if there's something I did CD projects.
That's so weird.
Yes, it is, but never mind. I think I have an idea. Why don't we just do? Okay, so now our VAE is going to be okay. Okay, cool. So our VAE is now in here, and there's something interesting happening to my terminal, and I think it's worth explaining what's in there. It's very important. We're in the VAE directory, okay? But notice now it's saying that I'm on a main branch. So this is the channel in Git in which I'm currently contributing to, which is main. And then my environment is the base environment, but we're hoping to work on the VAE environment. Okay, so that has been changed in there. And then we'll just kind of list through the files that's there. We have a DS store file in there. I'm sure you've seen this. It's very annoying. What this contains is just metadata about the folder, like a Mac folder. So if you've opened it in Finder, the Mac OS will try and keep a file there to tell it what you've seen before so that it's able to tailor its settings in the future. So you don't need this bit. You never need this bit, not from my machine or any other person's machine. And to make sure it never shows up again, it's good practice to tell Git to forget it. So we're going to use the word Git a lot, but then we'll come back and explain what this concept of Git is along, the series. But what you should know now is that there's a way to configure Git so that it ignores files like this, which you don't want. And the way is to do that is to add it to your git ignore file, and Git will make sure that never shows up. So what we do now is we open up our git ignore file, which is this file in there. We open git ignore, and then we add that file. And I think the name of the file is .ds_store. Okay, so it's not in there. So I'm just going to go to the top of the file and then add the .ds_store. So this is a good time to describe what's happening in the git ignore file so that we don't have to come back to it. The git ignore file is just a list of file extensions or file patterns that Git will ignore when saving stuff.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened. I think probably there was something wrong with Khalid's connection. I'm not sure. So hopefully he'll be able to come back soon. Then again, this is it, it's all about, in live sessions, all sorts of problems can happen. But yeah, so as Khalil was saying, so when you use Git and you want to make certain changes to a repository on your own local machine, and then you want to sort of push them back to GitHub, while pushing those files to GitHub, using git ignore, you sort of list all sorts of files, extensions, or certain patterns of directories that you do not want to push to the GitHub repository, right? So they bear no meaning to the actual, program or to the actual code that you're developing, right? So that is important to note. And I think in the future, we will go through proper, structuring of the git ignore file. So that's there. And while we're waiting for Khalil, I just want to also mention that so far into this video, Khalil has created a local environment on his local machine, and then has sort of installed certain packages such as pandas, such as scikit-learn, such as numpy, pytorch, and so on. And he also created an environment.yaml file that would basically have all versions of all packages and dependencies on his local machine stored, right? So, and remember that he created that using the conda export command, right? So, and he called it environment.yaml file, right? So the idea is that when I created a separate repository on my GitHub account, MLDon, right? Khalil is going to actually, clone that environment onto his own machine, which means that literally copying the environment, whatever is inside of, copying the repository, whatever it is, onto his own machine. And in that repository, if you remember, all I created by default was just a simple empty README file while creating the repository, right? So when Khalil actually cloned that repository onto his own machine, and then the next step is for him to actually make the necessary changes onto that sort of empty repository. And what are those necessary changes? So all the directories that he created, right? The source directory, the data directory, he has to put all of them into that empty repository on his local machine. He will also must include the environment.yaml file onto that empty repository. And the reason is, after he makes all of these changes into the cloned repository, now we have directories in it. Now we have an environment.yaml file in it. Next, what he's going to do is he's going to push the entire updated repository on his local machine. He's going to push it onto GitHub, right? And I am the owner of the repository, right? So when he pushes these changes onto on this repository on MLDon, which is my account, I'll have the sort of choice of I mean, he is now a collaborator on the project, but it tends to be the case that I would have the chance to actually look at the changes that he has made, and then I have the chance to approve of those changes or not. But then again, once those changes have been posted on the actual on GitHub on MLDon's account, then if I were to, now this is the important thing, right? Now, if I were to actually, if I wanted to have the exact environment that Khalil has on my own machine, all I need to do is to clone that entire repository from GitHub onto my own machine, right? So when I do that, I'll have all the directory structures, all the folders that Khalil has added, but I'll also have the environment.yaml file. Now that is where I can actually use conda to install all the packages, all the dependencies, by simply running a particular command of conda that just goes through all of the lines of packages on the environment.yaml file and installs each and every one of them, right? So that's going to be the story for today. But right now, I'm not sure what happened to Khalil, but I think he's back. Are you with us, Khalil?
Yes, I am. Oh my God, sorry about that.
You're fine.
My internet went down of all the times it could go down.
That's okay. I mean, first of all, no stress. These things happen. So while you were away, I just reviewed everything you mentioned, also give a glimpse as to what's going to happen now.
Okay.
What Git ignore is, that I also mentioned that, like, what the plan is from this point forward, which is for me to be able to, so you're going to push the changes to GitHub, I'm going to pull them, I'm going to recreate the environments. Just gave them the story until you're back, and thank God you're back, because I'd run out of explanation.
Okay, apologies for that. I'll just plow through. We have about 15 or less minutes. So let's at least push what we have in there. So thanks for letting them know, just kind of the audience know what we have in the git ignore file. So I will post an explanation on the git ignore file. And what I'll do is I'll at least push what I have at the moment and get you to set up your machine. And in subsequent streams, what we'll do is we'll go back and fix all the bits we had hoped to fix before my internet went down. Because, you know, these things do happen, mistakes do happen. So in real life, you should expect things to happen. So now we have our repository, and where we stopped at is we've created a repository, and we have this repository structure. We have a README file and a source file, which are all empty. And I think very interesting here is there's a new directory called .git. And this is what we've pulled from the repository. And this is sort of a database that keeps track of the changes we make in this directory. I'll expand on that in future sessions. But suffice to say, every change we make gets persisted in this directory. And when it's pushed up to GitHub, GitHub will use this tracking information in this directory to know, to kind of version our code and our changes. So let's see what we have in there. So we can do a git status. I'm just going to make my screen more visible in there. We can do a git status. I'll hide that bit. So what it's done is it's telling us that the git status tells us the status of our repository. So our directory is now a repository because it has .git directory in there. And it's telling us that there's one file called gitignore that has been modified. And then there's an untracked file, which means there's a new file called environment.yaml file. And it's saying that it has no changes yet. It knows that file has been changed. It knows that a new file is there. But do we want to track them in our repository? And the answer is yes. So what we do is we do like a git diff to see what's the detail of the files that has been changed. So in gitignore, you know, a line there has been, this line has been added, .ds there. So that's the new line in there. But everything else is perfect as it were before. So we'll do a git add. So what we're saying now is we want the changes we've done in gitignore to be tracked with the prospect of it being pushed to Mehran, right? Mm-hmm. And then we'll do a git status again. And now what we have is that file has been modified and it's green because it's been tracked in staging. But this file hasn't been added, so we're not tracking it. We know it's in the directory, but we need to track it. I'll expand on this in the future. So for now, let's just add that file as well. So git add environment.yaml. And then we can do another status again, just to see what's there. So now we know that the gitignore file has been modified and environment.yaml file is new. So we're going to do a git commit. And what it's saying is that, okay, take a snapshot of these two files and send that snapshot over to Mehran. So I'm just going to call it initial commit. So git, take a snapshot, but add a message to that snapshot saying that this is the initial commit. Okay, and then we want to push that to Mehran. So we'll do a Git Push, which hopefully should prompt for my username and password. Let me see if I can remember. It should be @gmail.com. And I need to look up the password. I think it's I can't see what I'm typing, so any mistake means I have to. So my authentication failed, but let's not fret. In the interest of time, I'm going to show you what happens when you have authentication problems. And it's failing because I can't remember my password, but I have a means of, knowing what my password is going to be. So there's a tool called the Github Desktop. Okay, and what it does is it gives you a visual interface for doing Git stuff. So it's sort of the low-hanging fruit, if we may. So what I'm going to do now is I'll try and open this directory in there, because here, hopefully my authentication has been saved within it. Here, not. So what I'll do is I'll just add a local repository, and I'll go to projects, and then VAE, and then I'll open it. Okay, so basically what I was trying to do from the command line, I can do from within this user interface. And I'll simply just click on the push button, and that pushes it up to GitHub. So we should be able to find those changes on GitHub. So I'll confirm that. Okay, so if we go to this repository, which was created by Mehran, you should see that there's a message there saying Amai Khalil made an initial commit 2 minutes ago. And we know we made changes to the gitignore file. And you can see the ds.store file there contains the changes we made. And then the environment.yaml file is as we remember it to be. So I'm going to keep this problem as it is for the next session, because I think it presents a very interesting challenge when you face Git errors. How do you go about troubleshooting them? So this error will continue to be there, and we're going to solve it live going forward. But I need to be certain that I can remember my password. If I can't, then it's not a good way to approach solving it. So Mehran, can you take over and see if you can pull and install on your machine?
Yeah. Okay, let me share my screen now. So this is the repository. But I see exactly what you were talking about. So Khalil has made a commit called initial commit. So I'm just going to clone this on my own local machine. So the way to do that is I go to clone.
Yep.
I'm just going to stick with HTTPS link. Yep. I copy this. Then, because it's a Windows machine and it's useless, I had to install this git bash to be able to comfortably use the command line. Now, I wonder where I should actually put this. Let me just create maybe on my yeah, let's just put it here for now. ML done here, and yes. So I'm just gonna put it here, maybe. This newsletter outreach template. Let's just call this stream for now. Yep. This is okay. Wait a second. So I just go CD, and this is another lazy way of.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, us Windows users have all the lazy approaches. Right. So now I can just use git clone, and then I can just literally paste the HTTPS link here, right? Paste, right. Great, so now I should have, I should have it. So yeah, that's the VAE repository under this particular, what is it, directory. And if I go into VAE, there we go.
Good stuff. Okay.
But you know something? What is strange to me is that I thought you had created some directories there.
Yes, and it's deliberate that that wasn't copied over. So that's kind of a Git detail. And if a directory is empty, then the directory has no objects and there's no point tracking them. So there's normally stuff you can do to make sure that those directories are sent over. And I think we do have a minute. I can push that as well so that I'll show you what happens when you want to share that before you set up the directory. Can I do that?
Yeah, go ahead and share. I want to see what happens on YouTube stream if you share at the same time.
Okay, so I'm sharing at the moment.
Yeah, are you?
Yes, I am. Can you see the screen?
It's interesting that, okay, I'm just gonna stop share. Okay.
Okay, so so we're in that we are in that directory for the project, and you can see I do have my data folder, my environment.yaml file, the notebooks, and the source bit. But what you'll notice is that if you look at the data directory, it's empty. The notebooks directory is empty. The source file is empty. Now, when Git was tracking changes, it noticed that its directories are empty, so it did nothing with them because, you know, there's nothing there to track. What's more important are the files, not the directories themselves. So if you want a directory to be sent over, even if it's empty, the convention is to go into that directory, for example, data, and create an empty file called, maybe, you know, it could be here in this case, which is keep. So the dot again being that tells us that this file will be empty and it will be hidden. So if we go to our data file, it looks empty, but in reality, it's not. There's a keep file. So what impact does this have with Git? If I were to go up one level and do a Git status, it will tell me that there's a directory that needs to be pushed. So we're going to do the same for other directories in here. We're going to go into the notebooks, and then we're going to do, and then the next one will be source. So now our 3 directories have changes, but they're empty. There's literally nothing in there. And if we go to our Github Desktop, you can now see the details of the hidden files, but you won't be able to see them in terminal. So I'm going to say, here's me adding empty directories. Okay, so empty project directories, and I can push that to Mehran. Again, it's because I don't have my password that I'm using Github Desktop, but there's no rule that says you have to stick to one. So from time to time, it's good to kind of hop around, but I'll describe what's happening in detail as we go along. So Mehran, feel free to pull what I have just pushed.
Okay, great. So let's see. Just gonna keep git pull, right?
Yep.
Okay, so
Like magic.
Good, magic. Absolutely. So now we have that. And also on GitHub, if I refresh this, I should be able to see that, okay, now we have the updates on GitHub as well. So when I pull, I'm pulling from GitHub, yes, to which Khalid has already pushed all of these changes. And if I wonder if I go into these directories, yeah, I see the hidden files.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I presume maybe the next step for me Okay, I can see the contents of, and I can see that, like, if I had not seen you creating this environment file, and like if you hadn't erased those redundant lines, I would have seen a very unpleasant scene in front of me.
That's my job, to make life easy for you.
Oh, God bless you, man. God bless you. Okay, so should we go ahead and create the environment on my machine then?
I think we should. I wonder though, before you do that, is it possible to increase the font size just a tiny bit? I think it's a Command plus or Control plus. It might work. Yes. Yeah, it does. Cool stuff. Okay.
You're a magician, man. You're a magician.
I wish.
So what's the command? I forgot.
I think it's been a while. I think it's conda create, and then -f. So you're passing a file. That's the -f, and then you specify environment.yaml. Good.
Okay, here we go.
I'm actually nervous.
Okay, is the base prefix aborting?
Yes. So can we see what's in the environment file? Because what it's trying to do is it's trying to set up the directory. So it's trying to set up VAE as your base prefix. So yeah, it's trying to copy these dependencies into your base prefix. So I think we need to specify a name and then pass a file. Let's try that again. So go back to your command. Okay. And I think you can do -n and then VAE. Okay, let's see what happens. It's been a while since I ran this command, but
oh, something's happening.
Happening. Yeah, we got that previously, didn't we?
No.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, really. What happened? The following packages are not available from current channels. What?
Yeah. Okay, so we got the -f wrong. So I'm just going to look up what the command is, because apparently it must have changed from when last I did this.
And create.
Hold on, just a second. I'll share my screen a bit. Great.
You're sharing your screen now?
Yes.
So let me stop share then.
Yep.
It's funny, I thought it should be like conda install or something.
No, it's actually installed. So here's creating an environment with commands environment from an environment.yaml file. And so what we did was we wrote conda create f environment.yaml. What we missed is the env in there. So I do know that there's been a movement internally to consolidate the command so that you don't need the env anymore, because I think they had this as an experiment in the past, but it's really confusing because, you know, you already talk into environment, so why put the environment in there? So, you know, it will throw you off a little bit. So let's see if that works on your machine.
And by the way, before you go, like this conda.io is a lovely website, guys. Like this is lovely. So make sure you check this out.
Okay, I'll post that to the Discord channel just in case.
Yeah, Discord. Yeah, guys, connect with us on Discord. Come on. What are you doing? Okay, so yeah, this was the problem. So we had conda create. We didn't
take out the name. Okay.
Here we have env. That's it. Go.
Okay, this is the part where we start pleading that it works.
It's working. Solving environments. That's great.
Yeah. So in solving environment, what it's doing is trying to resolve conflicts within packages. So it's going off looking for SciPy, looking for dependencies of SciPy. Does it match what can be installed on your machine? Will it conflict with other packages already installed in that same environment? So that's the magic happening there. And there are situations where it will fail because it simply can't find an optimal way to set up your environment. And when this failure happens, what you want to do is go back and look at your versions, or go back and look at, the dependencies that you have in there. Are there any slight changes you could make to get it to solve or not? And then, if it works, then you're all good.
Yeah, so while this is happening, right? While this is happening, I just want to show something that the environments that I have on my machine at the moment. So I don't have any VAE environment, right, guys? Right. So if we succeed in this step, I should see that VAE environment added here. Okay. Just as a proof that I don't have it.
Yeah.
And you know what? The funny thing is that if we were not actually live streaming now, this step would have taken a few seconds.
I know. That's what happens, which is really surprising because, normally it shouldn't take this long, but sometimes it does. I wonder, though, if it's a Windows thing.
Yeah, could be. Windows is not good. I have to stop using Windows. I mean, 5 years ago, I started my PhD. I had the choice between Windows and Linux. I made a fatal mistake. 5 years later, I'm still stuck with Windows.
I spent a lot of my career working with Windows machines, and they do have a lot of issues. But I think, it depends on where you look at it from. Like for enterprise programming, for a lot of when you need a lot of user interfaces, Windows works really well in there. And there are some hard choices the designers of Windows had made in the past that they can't let go of now. So for example, spaces in directory names, backward support for C++ libraries. And that is kind of pinned Windows to where it is at the moment. But I would say, it does work for a few people, especially the modern part of it. But for data science, there's still those rough edges that needs a little work.
Right.
That's right, yeah.
So while we're talking, my fan is going, my machine's fan is going crazy. So I presume it is starting to install something, hopefully.
I hope so. I don't know, because what's weird is because it's not in verbose mode, we don't know what's happening. What we know is that it's finished solving your environment, and by now it should start installing.
Okay.
So we could check to see
something.
Yeah.
So I suggest that we go ahead with a couple of questions that we have in the chat while this is happening.
Sure.
So Ninad, thanks for the questions. So Ninad is asking first, what's a YAML file?
Cool. So a YAML file is simply a text file. It's the formatting of that text file that makes it really interesting. And I think YAML is short for yet another markup language. Now, to understand why it's called a markup language and why YAML was created, in the past, it's been very tricky to come up with a standard to create files that machines can read and make sense of. And there's been lots of attempts at it. There's been ini files for settings. And then there was XML for data exchange. I'm sure you're familiar with XML. And then now there's JSON, which is just a JavaScript object that has been serialized or saved to disk. But with ini files, with JSON, and with XML, the problem was that they were too verbose, and you need another machine to create those files. So it's very painful to open a tag, then close it. When you deal with JSON, it's very difficult to keep track of all the braces in there, especially when you're dealing with large files. So YAML was a new initiative that came up with a standard where you use indentations. And then there isn't a lot of these fluffy symbols in there. And from those indentations, so if a line is indented a bit, you could infer whether it's a nested property or it's a list or a dictionary. So it's simply just a file format that uses indentation to specify the structure.
Okay, that's great. So, and Ninad also has asked another question. I was wondering if YAML file will work if the second person uses a different operating system, which is
Yes.
our case. Like, let's see if it's gonna work.
Yeah, like it should work. It normally works all the time. There are parsers, and these parsers are just algorithms, and they are not operating system dependent, so they do work. And that's the whole point of these files. They're supposed to be platform agnostic, but the added benefit of a YAML file is that it's so easy to read and it's so easy to edit, as opposed to the other file formats. So yeah, it's a very versatile and a new one. There is though a very interesting new standard called TOML. I think it's TOML, TOML. You may want to look at that. So it's a new opinionated alternative to YAML that has been gaining a lot of steam in the Python environment. And I think it's going to be supported by, it is supported right now by Python as a native default. But yeah, have a look at that. It's very exciting. And YAML, we use it a lot in like Kubernetes. No, yeah, in Kubernetes, you use YAML as well. But it's a very nice format. And we're going to use it a lot going down.
Okay, that's great. So for some reason, this is still frozen.
Okay, can you cancel it and redo it?
Yeah, I can, sure.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen again.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that it's very likely that the Python installation is the reason it's failing. But there is a way to...
I canceled it.
Yes, cancel. There is a place to run it in verbose. So can you load the command again, but this time use, I think it's -v. So space -v. So that should be verbose. So do a space.
Where? At the end?
I think anywhere, yeah, that will do. Okay, that might work. And you need to increase the font size a little bit. I think It's a bit too tiny, yeah.
Actually, this has never happened to me ever before, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Mind you, every time I've created the environment, like replicated an environment, I've always used the output of pip freeze command.
Oh,
so
yeah.
As a text file, basically, not a YAML file.
Yeah. So we'll give it a minute and see if it works. We can put a time bound to it, but I think the verbose should give us more information.
Ninanda is saying that maybe it's slow because the lists are big and the packages are huge.
No, Ninand, I don't think the packages. Pytorch might be slightly huge.
Yeah.
So that would be a major concern in there.
Oh,
there it is.
Okay, so something's happening.
No, I think it's so now we're seeing error messages in there. So your conda is a bit out of date, mine is as well. And then we scroll down. So it's able to find all of this in default channel, which is good. Is that the end of it?
Yeah. Should I update my conda and do this?
That's one way to go about it. Or we could hack our way through it, which is very a principled approach to doing it. So update your conda and then let's try once more. Because it seems it's trying to resolve it and then it stops at scikit-learn. So there's definitely an issue there.
Okay.
So it gives the command for updating it within like the first few lines of the output in that window.
Oh, here.
Yes, there. Just copy that line after the dollar symbol. Yep. Cool. Yep. Yeah, Nina, and Pytorch can be slightly huge. I think that's the huge bit in there, and SciPy, but I would say it's probably like version numbers. It's trying to sort out version numbers between the two, and maybe it's struggling to do that, or it's very likely that the defaults I'm using differs from the defaults that Mehran is using. So maybe some packages are not there. And these are actually problems that are very common when you deal with collaborative settings where people, have different machines and their conda or their operating systems are also different from also what you have in production. So it'll be interesting to solve. And maybe once we wrap that or once we solve that, we can wrap this session up. So thanks for your patience.
Okay. So the right-hand command line is updating conda, and then on the left-hand side, I'll again run this command.
Yeah.
Once my conda is updated. It shouldn't take this long.
I know.
It shouldn't.
It gives me a lot of peace of mind knowing that your conda update is also slow. It just tells me that there's probably nothing wrong with the environment.yaml file. Okay, cool stuff. So
it took its sweet time to find all of those updates.
I know.
About time. All right. Jesus Christ. Okay, so should I just do it?
Yep. Yeah, do it.
Okay, guys, cross your fingers, do your crosses, do whatever it is that you're gonna do. Send prayers. Let's see. Okay.
I'm actually excited about moving from Conda to, or rather combining Conda to Docker going forward. So this is something, I don't know if Ninand or any of the folks in the audience are familiar with Docker. If you are, just a thumbs up or a sign will work. So later on, we plan to do that. Mehran, I wonder though if the problem there is with scikit-learn because it freezes off at scikit-learn. So can we just take out scikit-learn and then install it afterwards, just in the interest of time? So while this runs, can you open the environment.yaml file?
I closed it. I stopped it.
Okay, so yeah, close it. Now, can you open the environment.yaml file and just take out scikit-learn? So that at least, we can solve out those issues there.
I'm just gonna go lazy Windows mode. Yeah.
Okay, so take out scikit-learn, good, and take out SciPy. Okay, that close.
And I suggest to take out Pytorch as well. Do you know why? Because my version of Pytorch should be the one that has GPUs because I have GPUs.
Okay, so take that out as well.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'll have to update it anyway later on.
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, did you understand what happened? So Khalil's version of Pytorch is the one that doesn't have GPUs. So the command that he has used. Whereas on my machine, I have Pytorch, I have GPUs. So later on, I will use the command appropriate for my machine to install Pytorch separately on the environment that I'm going to create using this YAML file. Okay, so I'm going to install that later on. Okay. I mean, if it doesn't work now, right? You're going to see a side of me that I don't want to be seen.
Yeah, have faith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get big.
Did you save the file? Just checking. Yes, you did. Okay. No, that's fine.
I did.
Can you do? Yeah. Can you do a cat? So just CAT, cat space, and then environment.yaml. Okay, yes. So okay, cool. So we've taken out the excess stuff. So now let's try doing the environment run again.
The only thing that I would suspect is probably, no, that shouldn't be an issue there. No. I was going to say difference in operating systems, but shouldn't be the case here.
It could be. What we have is your defaults are loading from a /win64 channel. Mine were loading from a Mac OS channel. And it's trying to resolve kind of like what's best for your Windows machine. So yeah,
okay.
So it did work. So I think the problem might be that either scikit-learn or SciPy, the version that we've specified, cannot be resolved for your own machine. So interesting. So you shouldn't be seeing this in an ideal case. The reason we're seeing this level of detail is because we used the -v, so -v. So that tells us in detail how Conda is struggling to resolve stuff behind the scene. But what we can do, Mehran, to avoid this issue in the future is to take out the version number in front of scikit-learn or SciPy, or we could use sort of a fuzzy specification. So we can specify that we want any version around 1.23 or 1.24 or 1.20, 1.20. So any version within that range can be installed for us, and that will be sufficient. So we'll do that in subsequent sessions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so while this runs, we could just kind of hint on what the future holds, just to kind of.
Oh, it's finished.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if I go Conda and list now, I see.
Oh, so cool.
Good, yeah. Good. I see VAE, and I can go Conda activate VAE.
Yep.
Okay, maybe it's because of Conda and list. Yes, Conda, or should it be source activate?
I haven't used Windows in a while, so.
Okay, so source activate VAE.
No, so it probably is Conda. So hold on, your shell has not been properly configured to use Conda activate. So yeah, so you need to do, I'm not sure what shell you are, but just do Conda init. Enter. I think you are in the bash shell. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Can you use the other window that you not this one, the other one? Yep, just Conda init bash. Okay, so can you do a Conda activate VAE? Super weird. So this is yeah. How have you activated environments in the past?
Was always source activate, but so I mean I updated Conda now. I don't know whether that makes a change there.
If you did, then you need to close your your window, the terminal window, and open it again. Because remember, what conda does is it rewrites your path. So it's very likely that it hasn't done that yet. So can you do a which conda? So which, W-H-I-C-H. Okay, so there's a script in that file that hopefully should run. So now you can try the conda activate. Yeah. So what happened is you updated conda. I'm sure you're using a very old version of conda, and the script for activating your environment simply did not load. So what you needed to do was kill terminal window and restart it. And once you do, this particular script will get loaded in your terminal, and then you can work with it.
Okay, great.
So it seems to work.
And I'm there.
Yes, you are.
But the star shows that I've activated VAE and we have the name VAE.
Yes, we do. Okay,
cool stuff. I think that's it for today.
I think so too. I think it's quite interesting that we ran into a few problems, and you know, I think one of the few things you'll see as we go along is how in reality you run into problems and how we go about solving them. And a good case in point here is we ran into an authentication problem where I am using a new machine. I haven't set up SSH and I can't remember my password, but I know that I've used a visual tool that has been authenticated with GitHub. So you see how I've quickly fallen back to that GUI tool. The GUI tool is sufficient, but as a power user, terminal gives me more control. So sometimes you need to make such shifts, but we're going to resolve that issue and come back to terminal going forward. You've seen how Mehran ran into a dependency issue. What works on my machine seemed to have a little problem that we can't solve on his end. And what he did now is kind of break down the problem into smaller bits that you're guaranteed, that you have guarantees will run, and then build up from those little bits. So he took out some certain lines, and now it works. Now we're going to put those lines back, and we'll try and adjust so that in the future it works on my machine and also works on Mehran's machine. So this is kind of like a meta problem that we hope to solve going forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as you said, this is what I like about live series, because they don't show you these things usually in videos. It's like clear-cut sort of how it works. And then if you look at the comment section down the videos, you notice that people have faced all of sorts of problems while trying to do the job. And it's strange because in the video they're just doing it just like that. But now everybody can see all the crazy things that could happen, even while doing something as simple as what we did. Now, just to wrap up, I just would like you guys to please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And also, we have created the Discord channel on the platform Discord. So the name is ML Dawn. Please do join because we leave, we put our announcements there. We put interesting content there, and you guys can post your questions there as well. We just have one final question in the chat. I don't know whether we have time, if it's going to be short.
It is short.
Yeah, okay. So Hassan Sayed is saying that, is there a command to identify transitive dependency packages so we can remove them easily?
It's a work in progress. That's a short answer. In Pip, recently there is Pip Tools. So if you're familiar with Pip, there's a package called Pip Tools, and what it does is it's able to allow you to specify those core dependencies, and the transitive ones just kind of fall off the grid, or it's easy to figure it out. I know there's been some initiatives to do that for Conda. I don't think it's matured yet. To the best of my knowledge, it's very likely it's there, but for now, I wouldn't trust it until it gets to a point where I'm very comfortable that it's not leaving out a core dependency. So my approach to solving this is to remember what I put in there and be very specific, rather than just kind of allowing some tool to do that for me, which is still early stage. So I'll have a look again, Hassan, and maybe in the next stream, I'll let you know, because it's also a problem that I would love to solve going forward.
Perfect.
Yes.
Makes sense. I'll also
Yeah.
post in the link to our Discord channel in the chat box, so feel free to click and join. We always appreciate it. Okay, folks, thank you very much. And Khalil, thanks a lot. It was a lovely session.
Thank you for joining. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for your patience. And again, take away the process, not just the knowledge, but the process of solving. I think that's the key stuff. Every other thing you can read on the internet. What you don't read is how people think on their feet and solve problems. So let that be your takeaway for today, how to recover from errors. Okay, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.